The Master Chief, John-117, the most famous of the Spartan IIs and often considered the hero of the Human Covenant War. Born on March 7, 2511 in Elysium City on Eridanus II, John, from an early age, was a unique kid. At the age of 6, his unique genetics were identified by Dr. Catherine Halsey, making him a prime candidate for a Spartan II program. Not long after, in September of 2517, John was kidnapped by Oni agents and replaced with a Flash clone, his parents never suspecting a thing. John and the other 74 candidates were taken to the planet Reach, where they were officially conscripted into the Spartan II program. From that day forward, John was schooled in military strategy, history, weapons, and put through excruciating physical training. During this time, John bonded particularly close with fellow candidates Kelly 087 and Sam 034. Following a training mission in 2519, John's leadership skills, which had been observed closely over the previous 2 years, were recognized as he was promoted to squad leader. John would be recognized as leader of the Spartans for the rest of his career, to the point that, in 2558, despite being outranked by fellow Spartan Fred 104, John acted as the de facto leader of Blue Team. In 2525, after 8 years of training, John and the other Spartans underwent extensive augmentation surgeries designed to turn the candidates into the ultimate soldiers. These high-risk surgeries resulted in the death of 30 Spartans and left another 12 crippled. John was among the 33 that survived intact. Though already at his physical peak, post-augmentation, John found that he was strong enough to take out a veteran soldier with a single punch. Following the augmentations, John led a group of Spartans on their first mission. Though he was injured during a small firefight, the mission was ultimately a success. Of course, it was only 2 months later that the Spartans were informed about the attack on Harvest by an aggressive alien hegemony, the Covenant. In the weeks to follow, the Spartans were deployed on a series of small missions to quell minor insurrectionist activity before arriving at the Damascus testing facility on Cheese City 4. Here, the Spartans were equipped with Mark IV Mjolnir armor, but also took on the Covenant for the first time. Leading a team of 3 Spartans, John, Kelly, and Sam boarded a Covenant ship to blow up the reactor and destroy it. During the mission, Sam's Mjolnir was punctured, meaning that he had to remain behind since the only way out was back through the vacuum of space. The death of Sam weighed on John, but he soldiered on as he had been trained. Over the years, John participated in an untold number of missions and was rewarded every medal short of the Prisoner of War medal. In 2526, 5 months after the death of Sam, John, Kelly 087, and Fred 104 were deployed to the colony of Circinius 4 following an invasion by the Covenant. Though most of the population was wiped out during the invasion, John was able to save the lives of some students at the Corbulo Military Academy, including Michael Sullivan and Thomas Lasky. By early 2531, John had been deployed to Harvest during the campaign to retake the planet from the Covenant. Little is known of his time there. In the same year, on May 1st, John, leading the Spartans Kelly 087, Linda 058, Fred 104, and Kurt 051, were deployed to raid Camp New Hope on Victoria, where an insurrectionist cell was operating. Though most of the team was captured, they were saved by Kurt 051, and the mission was ultimately a success. In February of 2535, John led Blue Team during the Battle of Jericho 7. The Spartans took out thousands of Covenant soldiers with a Havoc tactical nuke. Ultimately, though, the planet was lost and John watched from orbit as the Covenant began to glass it. In 2544, John was deployed as part of Operation Warm Blanket, the goal to recover Dr. Halsey after she had been kidnapped by the Covenant. Leading Fred 104, Kelly 087, Solomon 069, and Arthur 079, the Spartans infiltrated a Covenant fleet with EVA booster frames and rescued the Doctor. Sadly, 2 Spartans were killed during the operation. On July 17, 2552, John led the Spartans during the Battle of Sigma Octantis IV. While Navy forces battled the Covenant in space, ultimately leading to a victory, John and the Spartans were able to take out Covenant invasion forces, rescue civilians, and deny the enemy some unknown intelligence, instead ensuring that it found its way into UNSC hands. A month later, John and all surviving Spartan IIs at the time, 25 in total, were recalled to the planet Reach for Operation Red Flag, a plan to capture Covenant leadership and force a truce. The plan would ultimately be abandoned, however, when an invasion force of over 300 ships arrived in the Reach system. Though John bravely led the Spartans in defense of the planet, only 2 hours after initial contact, the Pillar of Autumn made a seemingly random jump out of the Reach system, carrying what was now thought to be the last Spartan II. On September 21, 2552, the Autumn arrived in the Soel system where a Halo ring was discovered and a whole new battle broke out. Now, John had to fight not only the Covenant, but ancient Forerunner constructs and the deadly Flood. Ultimately, John and Cortana destroyed the ring before it could be used, but at a terrible cost. He, Cortana, and a handful of others were the only survivors. These survivors banded together, captured a Covenant ship, and returned to Reach. as heading to Earth with an enemy ship would violate protocol. On reach, John discovered that some of his fellow Spartans had indeed survived. United once again, the Spartans soon discovered that the Covenant had found Earth and were amassing a fleet for invasion. With the help of his fellow Spartans, Cortana, and survivors from Halo, the group was able to strike a devastating blow and virtually wipe out the invasion force. Although, the mission did incur further losses and merely delayed the inevitable. On October 20th, 2552, the Covenant arrived at Earth, and John went to work defending humanity's final stronghold. When the Prophet of Regret, who had led the invasion force, prepared to bug out, John and the Enamor-clad pursued. Due to the suddenness of the invasion, the other surviving Spartans were unable to regroup before John departed. On November 2nd, Enamor-clad emerged from slipspace, following the Prophet of Regret and finding themselves at another Halo ring. Battle once again raged, and the flood outbreak here was found to be much worse than previously imagined. At the same time, the Sangheli discovered a plot against their race, and a civil war broke out within the Covenant. John, meanwhile, chased after Regret, killing him, and found himself in pursuit of the two remaining prophets. After the Prophet of Mercy died at the hands of the Flood, only the Prophet of Truth remained. When Truth attempted to flee the Flood outbreak, John pursued, but was forced to leave Cortana behind in case the newly discovered Halo ring needed to be destroyed to once again stop the Flood. On board the Forerunner vessel and Truth heading for Earth, John did all he could to kill the last remaining Hierarch. He was ultimately unsuccessful and forced to bail out when the ship entered Earth's atmosphere. He was found not long after re-entry, and briefly shocked to find that humanity had allied with the Sangheli. Still, John knew that there were larger issues than old hatreds, and joined as the UNSC and Sangheli attempted to stop Truth from firing the Halo array. They followed Truth all the way to the Ark, the Halo's forge, where the Prophet was finally killed. Unfortunately, the Flood, now in control of the former Covenant holy city of High Charity, had pursued. In a twist of fate, John would now have to activate a replacement Halo ring to stop the Flood. He, with the help of a Sangheli warrior known as the Arbiter, recovered Cortana, activated the ring, and ended the threat of the Flood. Sadly, John would not make it back to Earth. In slipspace, the portal meant to deliver him back to Earth became unstable, ripping the ship forward unto dawn in half and leaving the Spartan and his AI companion stranded in an unknown part of the galaxy. Cortana dropped a distress beacon while John entered Cryo, telling her,
"Wake me when you need me."
4.5 years, John slept. On July 21st, 2557, Cortana discovered a Covenant group invading the Dawn and woke John from Cryo. They immediately went to work clearing the ship, only to discover that they had drifted into the vicinity of a Forerunner shield world, Requiem. Not long after, they and part of the Covenant fleet were sucked in. Once on the ground, John found something wrong with Cortana, and she revealed that she was entering a state known as rampancy, the final stage of an AI's life. Ultimately, she would think herself to death. With new resolve, John was determined to get Cortana back to Earth where a fix might be discovered. Their plan was interrupted, however, when they picked up a transmission from a UNSC ship, the Infinity. In the course of trying to contact Infinity, John and Cortana unwittingly released an ancient Forerunner general known as the Didact, a Forerunner who had a hatred for humanity. John was ultimately able to make contact with Infinity just as they encountered the Didact. After driving the Forerunner back, John tried to get the captain, Andrew Del Rio, to pursue, but Del Rio refused, citing the safety of the crew. With little choice, John and Cortana remained on Requiem to try and slow the Didact down. Unfortunately, they were not successful. The pair continued to follow the Didact as he recovered a Forerunner device called the Composer and then headed to Earth. Above humanity's homeworld and with the help of Infinity, now commanded by Thomas Lasky, John and Cortana infiltrated the ship with the intent of detonating a nuclear warhead. In order to give John a straight shot, Cortana split off sections of herself and during the final confrontation used hard-light technology to hold the Didact down. John planted a grenade in the Didact's chest, causing the Forerunner to fall into a slipspace portal. Finally, John armed the nuke. In the last moments before detonation, Cortana was able to project a hard-light shield around John, protecting him at the cost of her own life as the ship disintegrated. Following these events, John was recovered by the UNSC and immediately debriefed by the UNSC Security Council. Shortly after, John was reunited with his fellow Spartan 2s, Blue Team, and they were deployed to Gamma Halo following a loss of communication with an Oni Science Team and Spartan Team Black. Upon arriving, Blue Team discovered both teams dead and the Didact preparing for another attack on Earth. Blue Team went to work teaming up with a monitor named 859 Static Carillion to use a new set of composers against the Didact, and for a time at least, containing the threat. Following his debriefing, John-117 was ordered to take some time off, but refused and, with Blue Team by his side, set out to protect humanity wherever they were needed. At one point in 2558, John took it upon himself to stop an assassination attempt at a human Sangheili peace conference. While he got the Sangheili delegates to safety, John was unable to save the human ambassador. Though initially blamed for the ambassador's death and the murder of several civilians, John was later cleared of all wrongdoing. Now, in late 2558, John and Blue Team are AWOL for reasons unknown. It will be up to the newly assembled Fireteam Osiris to track down the rogue Spartan 2s and return them to the UNSC.